Hey, what's going on, guys? Daniel here, one half of the Clock Brothers. Now, as many of you guys know, this pandemic has caused a lot of financial distress throughout the country, and this triggered the federal administration to issue an eviction moratorium. Well, in the last 6 to 9 months or so, we've seen this eviction moratorium be extended time and time again. It went from December 31st, it went to January 31st, and now it's at March 31st. Well, it seems that one state above all states have had enough. And who else but Texas?
Don't mess with Texas.
Because a group of Texas landlords and property managers suing the CDC over for halting evictions actually led to last Thursday, February 25th, in which federal judge John Barker issued a ruling statement stating that the eviction moratorium was unconstitutional. Now, his official statement reads that the federal government cannot say that it has ever invoked its power over the interstate commerce to impose a residential eviction moratorium. So he goes on and say, and I'm going to summarize this for you, pretty much saying that there was nothing like this during, the deadly Spanish flu pandemic, nor did it ever do something like this during the Great Depression. Matter of fact, at any point in our nation's history did the federal government do anything like this where it claimed such power. He wrapped up his statement by saying, which I think was completely BA, he says, although the COVID-19 pandemic persists, so does the Constitution. So he brings up a very good point. He's saying, look, we've experienced even more extreme times as a nation, and none of those times did the federal government ever step out of line like this to evoke such power upon themselves. Now, at this point, it's also important to know that Barker did not issue an injunction, meaning that he did not force the eviction moratorium to be removed. So right now, at the time of this recording anyway, it still stands. So here's where things get really interesting because, well, shortly after the ruling, the Justice Department on Saturday, February 27th, announced that they will be filing an appeal to Judge Barker's original ruling. So based on what we're seeing here, looks like we're going to be seeing some back and forth. But of course, the question that I have for right now, and I'm sure that many of you guys have, is, well, what does that mean for other states? Are states like Florida, Arizona, Oklahoma, states that tend to be a little bit more conservative and more red, I guess, in their politics, are they going to follow suit, right? Are they going to follow Texas's example and deem the eviction moratorium to be unconstitutional, thus changing a lot of the landscape for their respective housing markets? So first and foremost, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, right? Do you guys think that the eviction moratorium should stand? Do you guys agree with Judge Barker's ruling that it is indeed unconstitutional and it needs to be removed immediately? What do you guys think down below? Now, having said that, it's no question that the eviction moratorium has had a very significant impact on our housing market. And while common sense will tell you if it had an impact going in, it will certainly have an impact going out. Because yes, if you look at the big picture, considering what's happening with Texas, with them wanting to deem this eviction moratorium unconstitutional and get rid of it sooner rather than later, we have to see the other side of the spectrum where we see the Biden administration for months now proposing and vocalizing that they're looking to extend this eviction moratorium all the way to September 30th. So looking at both of these scenarios, one has to ask the question, well, what would happen to the housing market depending on which scenario occurs? So let's go ahead and break it down, the pros and cons, what would happen to the housing market, starting with what would happen if the eviction moratorium were to end today, if we had it Texas's way, right? So let's go ahead and first start with the good news. I believe, right, that the housing market would improve, but not in a sense where the housing prices will go up. But I actually think it would ease the bubble of artificially boosted prices that we've been seeing now in the housing market for the last 12 to 18 months. And considering, guys, that there are over 14 million Americans behind on rent right now, and a good chunk of that number are in single family rentals, we could see a new wave of inventory entering into the market. And while all that happening before the wave of foreclosures that myself and a lot of other housing and economic experts are forecasting for later this year or next year, it may end up being a good thing. However, let's look at the other end of the spectrum. It may worsen the situation for lower income affordable housing, considering that, well, if the moratorium did end today, a lot of these units that will be made available would actually go towards individuals with more financially stable situations, jobs. Obviously, it wouldn't necessarily benefit the lower income individuals because, well, these individuals who are financially stable already, they're already being squeezed out by the rising rent markets. I mean, my home state of Illinois, which by the way is the #1 state for people leaving, the rents are going up $100, $200, it seems, every single year, especially where I live. So again, those units being made available from the eviction moratorium most likely will go to those individuals, and the individuals who are low income will most likely be squeezed out. Now, let's look at the other end of the spectrum, where what will happen to the housing market if the moratorium indeed would get extended to September 30th. So first and foremost, I believe it would worsen a future market crash and add to the pile of foreclosures that I've already mentioned previously. So right now, again, there are 14 million Americans currently behind on rent, with 12 million owing approximately $6,000 per person. Those 14 million people result in over $70 billion worth of rent that has not been paid. But if you look at, this is the worst part, if you look at the non-institutional private landlords, aka the mom and pop landlords, they account for 22.1 million rental units in the US. And right now, half of them, guys, 50%, don't have the cash or credit to financially survive if their tenant stops paying rent. Now, the good side to this, obviously, is that the low-income affordable housing crisis wouldn't worsen. It would actually improve slightly, but it would definitely prolong and increase the consequences that we eventually are going to have to face with these artificially boosted prices, with the delinquencies, the wave of foreclosures that we have yet to see. It's definitely going to make these situations significantly worse. Now, if you guys want to know what I think, I believe that the solution to all this, at least from my point of view, is to cut the eviction moratorium as scheduled on March 31st so that you're not prolonging those consequences. But at the same time, I do believe that administrations should administer a tax credit to real estate developers that incentivize them to build lower income affordable housing units for those lower income individuals. That way, they're not just kicked to the curb once these available units are made ready and once they're kicked out of their housing. Because, well, let's face it, those individuals being evicted, chances are, did get hit pretty hard because of the pandemic. And we want to make sure they're taken care of too. But on the other end of the spectrum, it would also gain the benefit of easing the situation with the bubble that we're in right now with artificially boosted housing prices. So again, those are my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think about this whole situation with the moratorium being deemed unconstitutional. What do you guys think about that? How do you think the housing market's going to react? I want to hear your guys' thoughts and comments on this video. So again, I hope you guys like this video, share it, and also while you're at it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much. More updates coming soon for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.